The day I die, what would I have to have done in my life to be like, yeah, that was a decent life.
This person with a phenomenal philosophy is Noorvir Aulakh, the founder of Unweave, providing machine learning engineers the ability to train their model early on and track everything. Let's hear more about his project and also his journey on how he is establishing a decent life. This is Innected.
So, welcome, Noorvir, and thanks a lot for being here. We really appreciate it.
Well, firstly, thanks for having me here. It's really a pleasure. I guess I met Drew through Pioneer. So I'm part of the Pioneer program, and I'm working on a company called Unweave. It's still very early stage. And what I'm trying to do here is solve a problem for machine learning engineers in particular. And the problem is that right now it's a huge pain for these people to go out there and train their models. They have to provision cloud infrastructure, they have to get permissions, they have to manage pricing and so on. So I'm trying to make that whole process a lot easier, and I'm trying to center the whole model around data and also version everything with Git. So it's like a bunch of things. I'm still, like I said, very early on, but I'm trying to solve this problem of providing ML engineers the ability to train their models really easily and track everything. Like my background is in machine learning and robotics. I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering with a focus on mechatronics, which is like combination of mechanical, electronics, and some computer science. And I always kind of wanted to go into robots right from an early stage. When I was really young, playing with Legos and so on, I was super interested in robotics and anything mechanical, anything required you to be inventive in some way. So I kind of wanted to be an inventor. And I guess like no one really told me how to actually do that. So I thought to be an inventor basically meant mechanical inventor. So that's why I went on to do mechanical engineering because I wanted to, build cars and build airplanes and so on. I think that was like probably a late bloomer because I only realized at university that actually mechanical engineering is not really that most of the time. Most of the time you're like staring at a beam and you can't even see it move, but you're measuring stress and strain on the beam. And I remember my first lab session in MechEng. I was like, man, this is really uninspiring. Quickly from there, I started to go into software. And in my final year at university, I was trying to build like an autonomous drone. That didn't go that well, but it was like a great learning experience. And so after that, I worked for a year in the US and at Tesla, kind of working on the Tesla Fremont factory, working mostly on getting their data from the factory floor and displaying it to the right people. So this could be like people on the manufacturing floor, either supervisors or actually factory workers, or also like C-level execs, like Elon Musk and so on, who wanted to have a look at how the factory was doing early in the morning or late at night. So like have a customized data visualization for them by taking all the data generated by the factory. I mean, other business intelligence people were doing their job as well. So mine was like to collect that job that they'd done and get it to the right place. After a year, I was like, this is not really for me. It's not like it's fun. Working at Tesla is great, but it's not like that interesting. I still wanted to build robots. So I did a master's in robotics at UCL in London. And that was sort of focused on getting robots to understand the world around them, mostly computer vision focused. Kind of like I was trying to go into 3D computer vision because my thinking is that you need to have a model of how the world works to better operate in it. Like there's multiple schools of machine learning, but that's like model-based machine learning. It basically means that. After that, I worked in Berlin for a year at a startup that was doing very similar work to what I was doing in my master. So yeah, that's a very long-winded way of getting to where I am right now.
So, have you met Elon Musk?
We had these all hands meetings. So we had the first one, I think the first week I was there, which is like everyone in the factory collects and Elon gives a top like motivational speech of some sort. I mean, also about how the factory is doing. So you can expect in the first row, staring straight up at Elon. And it gets old very quickly, I was extremely excited. Frankly, Tesla was the only company I wanted to work for. Like the other companies are, yeah, cool, but Tesla was like the place that I wanted to work at. Maybe SpaceX, but I'm an Indian citizen, so I can't really do that. And yeah, like I was all the way over. Everyone was asking me, "Are you gonna meet Elon? Are you gonna like what's your role gonna be?" So yeah, like I was in line like first like an hour before the meeting started. I was in my place in the front spot, and it got old very quickly. He's just another human being. And I remember thinking, was I really some tight pants? But I think that was that was like all that was had a lasting impact.
That's a cool experience though. Like seeing Elon Musk and seeing, saying, "Oh, he's just a normal person." I think that's
Yeah,
an experience that not many people get. But
yeah.
wow,
I think a lot of people probably meet their celebrities and are underwhelmed, or like their celebrity sort of, I don't know, idols, and are kind of underwhelmed. I've heard that. I mean, I wouldn't say I was underwhelmed. Like it was cool to be around Elon Musk. He had like a slightly strange vibe to him. But it was like, like just another human being. It's not nothing crazy.
you said you started with an autonomous drone. Is that what you were?
We were trying to be honest, we didn't have the skills. Like we had the skills to build a drone. We didn't really do the mechanical part. Like we had all the parts and so on. What we were trying to do is like the balancing, the actual controller for the drone. That's very mechanical engineering-esque, which is you're doing control engineering. Drone is like a really interesting thing to control because you have these four motors, and like using those four motors, you control 6 degrees of freedom. So it's really like it's like an under-actuated system, as it's called. So yeah, it's a very interesting task. But to actually have it autonomous, let me say it was like more difficult than anticipated. Like Elon Musk has been saying for 5 years or 10 years that he's going to have autonomous cars and hasn't done them. So I think there's like some overlap there in terms of underestimation. So yeah, it kind of worked. Like this is a undergrad project, so there's a very limited budget, and yeah, we got like we got reasonably far. We got a good grade, which we didn't deserve, but that's how it was.
You said that you wanted to be an inventor, like you had this idea of being an inventor. Where did that come from?
Surprisingly, actually, I don't want to sound too fairy tale-y, but like I remember the exact moment. I think I was 5, and I was playing with these not Legos, but I actually don't remember the name. There's these really big bricks for children, like Legos that big. This brick is like this big. I remember I made a helicopter out of it, and it was probably a shitty helicopter. It was just like one brick on top, two on the side. And my grandmother was like, "Whoa, you're going to be an aeronautical engineer one day." I was like, that sounds like a cool word. Like, I want to be an aeronautical engineer. And then for like from 5 to 18, I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. I mean, obviously, I had swings in between of wanting to be a footballer and firefighter and all of those things. But like the serious thing that I wanted to be, like if some older person asked, was an aeronautical engineer. So I started my job in Berlin in 2018, and like 6 months through the job, and I was really, really excited. I studied machine learning and computer vision. It just sounds like this like fantastic subject, right? Like suddenly you can impart intelligence to an inanimate being, like a computer, and that's like incredible. You can like yeah, there's very few fields that you can actually try do that. So I was extremely excited. I went to work at this company, Micropsy Industries in Berlin, and they were teaching, or they are teaching robots how to learn from human demonstration. So a human demonstrates a task, and you want the robot to sort of pick up from that demonstration. It's called imitation learning. They did simple stuff like plugging in cables and welding stuff and so on. And so I started doing that. And then like 8 months into it, I just felt extremely depressed. I was like, is this it? Is this all there is to life? Like I'm like slaving away for a company whose, code I don't own, whose IP I don't own. Like it's not even open source. I think that's an element of open source that rings true for a lot of people, that they want to have some ownership and something they produced out there in the open for other people to see. And I think that's definitely a huge part of it. My whole family are scientists. Both my parents are scientists. My sister is doing a PhD. I was thinking to myself, well, when they die, they're going to leave something behind. Like I don't believe in afterlife or anything, but in some essence, they would have contributed to humanity, and their work will be out there for people to see and use and build on top of. Like, what am I going to do? What even like leave alone when I die, when I quit this company I'm at, like all the code that I've written, all the ingenious stuff that I think I've done is just going to be gone. Like it'll be invisible to most of the world. So that got me really, really depressed. I think I had like a quarter life crisis. I've heard a lot of people have that in their first job. And so I went on a solo trip to Greece, and I rented a bike and went around Corfu, just riding nonstop. Essentially, it's kind of therapeutic. I'd recommend it. But like I think on the 5th day, my goal was to come away from it with some sort of enlightenment, and I think it's a terrible goal to have. You can't sort of expect to get enlightenment, because like you spend most of your time trying to think, okay, like how do I solve this undefined problem? And then somehow on the fifth day, I think I actually finally stopped thinking about it. And so I sort of reframed the question, and I put it in terms of like the day I die, like assuming I'm an old person, I think 75 would be okay. I'm not one of those people who wants to live to 200. So like the day I die, what would I have to have done in my life to be like, yeah, that was a decent life. And I think that question sort of reframed the whole picture, because that then it doesn't really matter if you worked at Facebook or Google or what have you. Like those companies are probably going to be dead. Worse, everyone's going to think they're evil. Which is like kind of true. And that made me like think about the 5 things I wanted to do in my life. And those 5 things kind of keep changing. I frankly don't even remember what they exactly were back then. I thought that would be an adventurous life or an exciting life if I try and actually achieve those. So I think that framing helps me a lot. I forgot what your original question was, but something along this.
It doesn't matter. This was phenomenal. Wow.
Yeah, this was really inspiring, and that kind of makes me think, because I think I have less time than you guys. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna die earlier than you guys, but it's making me think. When I die, will I regret because I didn't do something I wanted to do, right? So it seems like you found your passion, or you have something that you really want to contribute, and it seems like even if Google gave you a job, it's not important for you because you want to build something that you feel is fulfilling for yourself. Is that how your thoughts are and how you're like working these days?
Yeah, I mean, I try to tweak the optimization objective. Like that's in machine learning. That's what all of machine learning is. It's just fancy math for it's just math that has existed for a while. You're trying to optimize some objective that you define. So I try to tweak it all the time. I think having a pure, like really far off optimization objective of when I die, like what do I want to have done, is good, but it's also kind of terrible for the short term, because then you stop working at your company or you stop studying and you're like, this is relevant. So that's also not good. Yeah, if Google gave me a job and gave me, I don't know how much like to pay these days, like 300K or whatever, I probably wouldn't say no. Like I'd probably do it for a little bit. But like I think what that meant more for me was that I don't want to go out chasing that. Like I know people who are at university and like, oh my God, my dream job at Google. I like that seems ridiculous to me. Like that. Yeah, cool. I was like that with Tesla, I guess, to some extent. But it's not like you shouldn't really tie your self-worth to Google. And also like their hiring practices are kind of ridiculous. Like they make you do these stupid coding tests, which I agree they're useful to some extent. But like anything that tries to introduce this contrived way of separating people, I'm a little doubtful of. Like I think if I was hiring people, I'd probably also do some like that to some level. But the idea of spending my life practicing coding problems, not because I enjoy doing them, but because some company is going to pay me some money for it, is just right now I don't feel like I want to do that. Like maybe I'll do it in 5 years. Right now it doesn't seem that important to me. So yeah, like that was part of the reason why I decided to go on this, try and build my own stuff. But frankly, it's just exciting, like you're sort of doing your own thing. You get to be part of making decisions. I don't know if you've read How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's an interesting book. And yeah, I'd recommend reading it. It's like one of the major themes in that is everyone wants to feel important in life. And whether you're trying to talk to someone else, make them feel important, or about yourself. I think that's what really matters to most human beings.
To be honest, I'm really learning a lot right now from your experience.
This is just me talking out loud. So like I wouldn't take it at
No,
face value.
but I think a lot of people would love to hear this because it's coming from your experience, right? Everyone's experience is unique, and to be honest, I'm really you're making me think a lot, but it's really great.
We have one last question. If you were back in high school, so let's say maybe you don't even have a passion or you're not really sure, how would you approach moving forward? What would you do?
I think contrary to what's cool these days, I would probably still go to university. I would probably not study mechanical engineering. Again, I would like not to ape Elon Musk, but I probably would study physics, partly because it's just cool. Like you get a broader picture of the universe. My dad's a physicist, and he always talks about these things that I have no idea about. So it'd be cool to be able to at least be on the same wavelength. I'd probably start building stuff sooner. I think one of the big advantages or big like unfair advantage that software engineers have, or people who did computer science degrees, is that they get from an early stage in their, I don't know, education, they start building stuff, because software, you can build stuff, put it out there really, really rapidly. I think that's incredibly valuable. One of the things I didn't like that much about my engineering degree was that it didn't really focus on like the fundamentals, and they're like, here's an equation, like how you solve a partial differential equation, like go and solve it, like go and apply it to like fluid flow, whatever. Or here's how you compute the eigenvalues of a matrix, like go and apply it. And you're like, what the hell is an eigenvalue of a matrix? I don't know what that means. And you just don't have enough time. You're like flushed with a lot of information. At least that was my education. Like, I'm sure there's better educations out there. So I would like to go back and focus on the basics. I think when I was doing my master's, I had a lot more of that. I had a lot more of the focus on the actual what's the intuition of something you're talking about. Because frankly, I think most humans, like, yeah, unless you're extremely special, the brains weren't made to think in purely abstract terms. I think you can train yourself to do that, but it really helps to have some sort of intuition about a concept. So I think I'd go back and focus a lot more on digging into like why, the motivation of why you're doing something, and also the intuitions behind it, and more on the fundamentals. Then it's a lot easier to build on top from that.
And after uni, what would you do for, like, would you still be going for a job, for getting employed? Also for the monetary part?
I would probably definitely need to do it for the monetary part. Um, Yeah, I think I would probably do a job for a couple of years at least, because also it gives you, you don't, right now, if I went back with all that's in my brain right now, then I wouldn't do a job. But like, this is assuming that I go back and the slate is wiped and I have to start from scratch. There's a lot of things I didn't know. And again, there's that, there's the privilege part of it, that, there's people whose either their parents or their, like their friends or whatever, like basically download that information into their brain. When you're a doctor, it's a lot easier to tell your kid how to be a doctor too, right? So if you're trying to do something that's slightly different to your parents, that's again why people whose parents haven't gone to university or haven't done like a white collar job, they have it a lot harder, frankly, and no one really talks about that much, because the hardest part is not to work 12 hours a day on something that you really care about. The hardest part is to know what to work on. That's what I'm facing with my product right now as well. The hard part about starting a company is not, and you hear Elon Musk saying that it's chewing glass and staring into the abyss and all that, which is true, but no one really tells you what is the hard part. Like, Paul Graham also says starting a startup is the hardest thing you can do. I think the hard part is not that you have to work 14 hours a day or 12 hours a day. I think that's almost easy, because if you care about something, most people are able to do that. The hard part is that you don't know what you have to work on, and yet you have to work 14 hours a day. That's almost like a mad person thing to do. So obviously, you have ways of making that easier for yourself, like asking your users and so on. But at the end of the day, you frankly don't know what the right direction is. You just have to kind of try it out.
Hey guys, thank you for staying till the end and hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm looking forward to meeting you all in the Discord and hope to see you on our next episode. This was Innected.